we continue a tradition that is almost 400 years old, goes back to the earliest days of the Puritan settlers who gathered to have an annual meeting to make decisions about their future as congregations together. So I offer you these opening words by Heather K. Januels. From the power of our memory and history, with high hopes for the days that lie ahead, we gather to craft the destiny we share with one another. We gather with faith in our practice of democracy. We gather with hearts and minds open to the wisdom of every voice among us. In our gathering, let us dream and design a bold future. Let us bring our best selves to this service and this work. And may we dream our dreams and do our work with love. In the spirit of this love and the dreams we dream together, I light our chalice. Now I invite our membership team to weigh in as to a quorum. All right, Mary reports that we do have a quorum. I'd like to invite our assistant moderator, Donald Gregg, to present the annual meeting minutes from last year.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm filling in for our esteemed moderator, Diana Watt. She unfortunately was unable to be with us today, so I'm filling in. With that in mind, I would ask everyone, please, if things don't go smoothly for me, just bear with me. I'm doing the best that I can. Okay, so the minutes from our last annual meeting are printed in the annual report. They're fairly long. I don't want to read the whole thing, but I'm going to point out a few highlights from the last meeting. The meeting was called to order at 11:34 by Jennifer May. She summarized the agenda that we were going to follow, important things that happened. Policy items were moved out of bylaws and into appropriate policy. The criterion for affiliated community minister was broadened to be in line with UUA. The committee on ministry was changed to committee on shared ministry. We changed last time exiting board member appointment from LDC chair to LDC member. And let's see, other things of interest. Last year, Lois said that she felt very confident that we would not see a significant decrease in revenue for the coming year. And in fact, we had one of our best fundraising years ever. So she was right in that regard. So good job, Lois. And while we do still have somewhat of a budget shortfall, that's because of the new mill building and more expenses, not because of a failure to raise revenue. Yeah, and then we did the same things we're going to do this time. We elected a slate of candidates, we approved the budget, and other such things. So if you would like to read it in its entirety, it's there. I'm not going to. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from our last annual meeting?
And a motion via the chat box will be fine.
Motion to approve the annual meeting minutes from May 31st, 2020. I see a motion. I see a so moved from Eric Van Bars, a second from the Romes, Amanda and Andrew Rome. And voting on these things, we're going to move and second and discuss on our voting items during this meeting. And then at the end of the meeting, you will have been sent a ballot through your email to vote on all of things. So all voting will come at the end of the meeting. So is there any discussion? All right, seeing no discussion, I think that takes us to our next item then. Next comes highlights of the year. Diana probably was going to prepare a slideshow and do something fancy, and unfortunately she wasn't able to be with us. Much of the things that she said in the annual report and things that I thought of were mentioned in the service that we just left. A few things that are worth mentioning probably. which everyone is aware of, is soon we will be in Hobbs Hall, which is fantastic. Other big highlights of this year, we experimented with a 7-member board. We're at a 9-member board. UUA recommends a 7-member board, and we experimented with that and found it to be favorable. So that's a highlight from the year. As mentioned in the service, and we are well out, our virtual services have been fantastic this year. We've been able to stay in touch. We've been able to do new things. We've been able to see Hal in multiple forms, singing multiple voices at multiple times, which is really cool. We like that. And we've been able to reach far outside our local community, which is fantastic. And these are things that we will probably continue to do. Both Diane and I are big fans of our music program. Hal gets a big thumbs up for his work with the music program. A time for all ages. That's fantastic. We really appreciate that. And our sermons this year have been great, both from Reverend Stephen and the other people who have stepped up and led services. So yeah, all fantastic highlights from the year. Nothing fancy here, but that's what we have. So next on our agenda then is the bylaws change. And as I mentioned, UUA recommends a 7-member board for a church our size. They feel that it helps decision-making to be flexible and nimble. And we experimented with that this year. As a first-year board member, I don't really know what it's like to have a 9-member board. Some of the people who have been on longer said that they felt that discussion was much better. Everybody's voice was heard. A big step up is with a 9-member board. Sometimes people don't show up for the meeting because, well, there's 8 other people, it'll be fine. But on a 7-member board, you know, if you're not there, it makes a big difference. So attendance has been very good at our board meetings. Everybody shows up all the time unless something bad has happened. So that's been a big plus, and we will be asking you to approve that today. So yeah, so that's our bylaws change. Can I have a motion to approve the bylaws change from a 9-member board to a 7-member board?
Okay. Rebecca Klein so moves.
Is there a second?
Kara Kramer seconds.
Is there any discussion?
You are able to unmute if you have questions or concerns about this change to the bylaws.
Seeing no discussion, we will be voting on this bylaws change in the election. The bylaws change is a simple majority. So next on our agenda, we go then to the report 2020 prepared by Jim Scott. Lois is going to take this.
We're currently winding down fiscal year 2021, which started on July 1st of last year and it ends on June 30th of this year. Despite the pandemic and being virtual all year long, we're doing pretty well, and we anticipate that we're going to be able to carry some funds over from this fiscal year into the next fiscal year, which we're going to need, and I'll get to that in a moment. I want to thank the auction team for mounting a really successful virtual event back in November. I was amazed at the success. We made $17,000 virtually. It was great. That didn't quite hit the bogey that the team had. So right now, they're conducting what they're calling their Mind the Gap Bidorama. And we're going to try to fill in that gap of the revenue that we didn't get back in November. And that closes at 3 o'clock today. So please, after this meeting, get online, place your bids, bid things up. That revenue, all that revenue is going to help us a lot to finish up this year in good shape. I think that Don did mention that our congregant Jim Scott performed an informal financial review for us this year. We do this every couple, 3 years. And the purpose of it is to just provide some independent oversight to make sure that we're doing best practices with regards to our finances. I've included his full report in your packet, your meeting packet. You can read all the details for yourself, but overall, Jim found that our church's finances are transparent, properly documented, and responsibly managed. He provided us with a couple of suggestions for how we might add a little bit of additional transparency to the monthly treasurer's reports, and we're implementing those now. And we'd like to thank Jim for doing that. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of work for Mary Beth to get him the information that he needed. And he got that done back in March, and we're very pleased with the results. So I want to talk about the fiscal 22 budget. I think that's the next slide. We're starting there. Do we have a slide on that? Okay, no slides. Oh, here it comes. So our bylaws require us to prepare a balanced budget every year, which has to be approved by you, the congregation, at the spring annual meeting. And what this means is that we have to make a reasonable estimate of all the expenses that we're going to incur in the coming year to keep the church running. It also means that we need to identify where the funds to cover all of those expenses are going to come from. And so this is really the main reason why your pledging is so important, because we cannot plan to spend money that we don't have some good faith assurance that we're going to actually get. So I want to thank everybody who responded to the pledge drive this year. Our pledge donations after the initial push, and then we had an initial follow-on push earlier this month. And between those two pushes, we ended up with 11% increase in our pledge donations. And that's great. You all have come through when we need it, and we really appreciate that. The slide here shows where all of our revenues are coming from. Let's go to the expenses slide next, and we'll come back here in a minute. So all of our expenses, our facility expenses, our personnel expenses, our office expenses, those are all spread amongst our program areas that are shown on this slide here, based on the amount of time that our staff spends working on these ministries. This year, our expenses are up significantly from last year. And the primary reason for this is we have a brand new hall, meeting hall, and there's a lot of new expenses associated with running that. We have more hours for the sexton. We're gonna have to do more maintenance, snow removal, utilities, security, all those kinds of things. So our expenses are going up, and unfortunately, our pledged income didn't go up enough to cover all of that. There's some other things that went up, like the health insurance costs have gone up, are going to go up 10% this year, things like that. So to get us through this year, because we're not seeing the growth yet for having the new hall and coming back together in person, let's go back to the income slide again. Everything on here is going to look pretty familiar to you. There is one thing we had to do this year that we hope we don't have to do next year. Hope we don't have to do it this year. And that is, we need to make a draw from our endowment fund from an unrestricted bequest that we got a couple of years ago. And we're going to need to draw about $17,000 from that if we don't get more income than what is predicted here. And so I'm hoping that when we get in the new hall and we start to see growth, that we're going to get more non-pledge donations than maybe we estimated. The number that's on here is kind of typical that we've had for several years in the past. Rental income is going to still be low unless we can, well, we're getting back in person soon, I hope. So I'm hoping maybe our rental income will be a little more than this once we get the new hall open, up and running, and the rental team gets all that in place. But we've been conservative with those estimates. Likewise with fundraising. We did put in a full $25,000 prediction for the service auction, which is typical for an in-person year because we're going to be able, we're assuming we're going to be able to have an in-person auction in the new hall in the coming year, probably in the spring. So this is where then, so this is where all of our income is going to come from. And we need to have that draw to make the budget balance. And like I said, or maybe I didn't, that's going to be the absolute last place we pull funds from at the end of the year if we need to, you know, pay our bills. So I guess to wind things up, I want to thank everybody again for coming through and pledging. I feel like we're good and strong going into this coming fiscal year, and I'm really looking forward to seeing all of you in person again. Are there any questions?
Lois, I'd like to thank you for all your work on behalf of the congregation as our treasurer, as you finish your first term and start your second term, for which we are very grateful.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Yes, thank you, Lois. So at this point, I believe we need a motion to accept the 2022 budget then. Motion to accept the 2022 budget.
I so move.
All right, the second. You can type it into the chat if you like.
Second.
Second from Kara Kramer. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we can move on to our next item then. Next comes presentation of the slate. I believe Rhonda Richardson is going to take this for us. So take it away.
Okay, thank you. I want to begin by thanking the members of the Leadership Development Committee for their hard work this year in contacting folks and inviting them into leadership roles. I also want to thank all of those who accepted a phone call from someone on the Leadership Development Committee and everyone who gave such very careful consideration to their preparedness to step in to lead. This year we're presenting a slate. I don't know if the slate's available on a slide. Okay, good. So we've nominated 3 new people to come into leadership on the Board of Trustees. Each of these individuals will fill a 3-year term through June 30th of 2024. So Heidi Schaefer-Bish, Rod Thompson, and Carol Weigand. For financial secretaries, we actually, from the time we first submitted the slate, there's been one modification here, and that has been published in the e-news each week, but I will let you know of that too. It just had to do with availability of individuals. So for financial secretary, Saunis Parsons has agreed to fill a 3-year term through June of 2024, and Nancy Doherty will come on as an alternate through June of 2022. Sandy Eagland will not be, she's no longer going to stand for election as a financial secretary alternate. The endowment committee, Bonnie Harper, we've nominated Bonnie for a 3-year term to serve through June 30th of 2024. And then our leadership development team, Kathy Slater has agreed to stand for election for a 3-year term through 2024. Kathy has served this past year on an interim basis, and we're really pleased to welcome her to a full 3-year term with us. These are the individuals who'll be continuing in their elected positions. So as we move to the 7-member board, we have 2 board members who will serve for one additional, they have 1 year left on their term. That's Liz Bright and Vivian Sandlin. And then Donald Gregg and Diane Klaas each have 2 years remaining on their in their terms. So next year we'll be electing just 2 new members to the board. Financial secretaries who will be continuing, Marion Yeagler will continue for 1 more year, and Eric Van Bars for 2 more years. And then the endowment committee, again, most of these committees are, you know, every person serves a 3-year term, but we stagger the terms so that each year we're only filling 1 or 2 new seats. So for the endowment committee, we have Shirley Kiernan, who has 1 more year in her term, and Jennifer Gregg, who will have 2 more years. And the leadership development team, Trish McLaughlin, has 1 more year on her term, and I have 2 more years on my term. And I believe that's it. So at this point, I guess we will entertain a motion to accept the slate.
Motion to elect the slate. So I see a second and a moved. So we have a motion to elect the slate and a second. So again, we'll vote on this at the close of the meeting on your online ballot. Next on the agenda, we go to presentation of congregational statements. I think Mary Ann was going to do this for us. Before we start, point of order, these are separate items on the ballot. Do we need a separate motion for each one then?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we will. Okay.
Jill, the online ballot, there's a link in the chat and we will provide it at the end of all of the motions and some more details on how to vote.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. As Don said, we'll have 2 different statements having to do with racial justice. One of them is our own congregational statement of commitment to racial justice, which I'm going to refer to as the UUCK statement. And the other one is from the Unitarian Universalist Association Statement of Conscience, and I'll refer to that as the UUA statement. So let me start with ours, which we're more familiar with. And really, on behalf of the Race for Justice team, I want to thank the congregation for your involvement in helping create the statement that will guide us as a congregational community in our racial justice efforts. Just to review quickly the background, we, with the support of the board, we, as a racial justice group team, we sponsored 2 different Zoom meetings. The first one is where we sought input from the congregation about what the congregation would like for our church to do in the area of racial justice and how we want to be known for those efforts. Based on the first input, subcommittee created a draft statement that we presented at another Zoom meeting. We received feedback, and on the basis of that, we revised the initial draft, gave the board, allowed them to review, and they approved our revised statement, and you would have that in your packet. The full statement, in addition to an abbreviated tagline that is just a 3-line cryptic description of the committee, the statement of commitment for our church, which is uniting in witness, speaking courageously, and collaborating for freedom. So think about that on a t-shirt sometime. Okay, the next one in that is the UUA statement of conscience. And at General Assembly 3 years ago, actually, a group was put together to study what they refer to as the undoing of systemic white supremacy a call for prophetic action. And the study group has been working, and they have created a statement and basically a report that if it's approved at GA, will guide the organization's efforts in the area of racism and racial justice for the next several years. All we're being asked to do as a congregation is to approve the report and the statement being placed on the 2021 General Assembly agenda. We're not asked to approve the statement itself, but only approving the placement on the agenda for discussion and vote at GA in June this year. So that's pretty much where I am, Don.
Okay. So then we need 3 separate motions for these. We need a motion to accept the covenant of right relations.
Oh, that's a different
motion. What's that?
That's different. The covenant of right relations is different from the racial justice statement.
I'm sorry, which one did you just do?
I just did the UUA statement.
And Mary Ann, on behalf of the Committee on Shared Ministry, could you or brief on the covenant of right relations?
Yes, okay. I'm also on the Shared Ministries Committee. And again, with cooperation of church members, we were able to get input on a covenant of right relations, which in essence is a commitment that we make to one another. It's the way we covenant to be in relationships with one another. So it's not written as a we shall not do. It is a we pledge to do in terms of how we respect and interact with one another as a congregational community. So the Committee on Shared Ministries then took that input and put together the covenant of right relations that we have shared with the congregation, and now we have ready for vote at this meeting. Okay, Don, now I'm ready.
Okay.
Now there are
Did
3.
we cover the statement of commitment to racial justice as well then?
Yes, there's
right,
2 of those and 1 of the other.
All right, so all 3 have been covered. So at this point then, we need a motion to accept the covenant of right relations.
Yes.
Yeah, we need to accept the covenant of right relations, accept the congregational statement of commitment to racial justice, and endorse the UUA statement of conscience for the GA agenda.
Hey, Don, why don't we take these just one at a time? It's a little confusing if we're trying
Okay, so again, motion to accept the covenant of right relations.
Accept.
Okay, that's from Chris Dumm. Made the motion to accept the covenant of right relations. There's a second from Diane Kloss. Is there discussion? Seeing none, we will then move to the congregational statement of commitment to racial justice. I need a motion to accept the congregational statement of commitment to racial justice.
Amanda has made that motion, and Eric Van Bars has done a second.
Is there any discussion on this one? Congregational statement of commitment to racial justice. Discussion, please. Is there any discussion on the statement of commitment to racial justice?
Okay.
All right, seeing none. Now we need a motion to endorse the UUA statement of conscience for GA agenda.
Christy has made that motion to include on the General Assembly agenda.
Okay, so we have our motion from Christy Anderson and a second from Andrew and Amanda Rome. All right, is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, then when we vote on these will be on your online agenda. We need a 75% majority for these congressional statements and for our budget and our leadership candidates, bylaws change. And the minutes, that's a simple majority. And now comes the big one, nomination of Christy Anderson as an affiliated community minister, which Reverend Stephen will take.
It looked like we had some discussion about use of white supremacy in reference to our church. We want to explore that before I present my...
Yeah, we probably should go back and give an opportunity for discussion.
Okay.
Randy, can Randy unmute and explain his objections? Give everyone a chance to comment and listen.
I think most people are familiar with my objection to the use of the term white supremacy in reference to our church. I associate white supremacy, that language, with skinheads and Nazis, and I object to that being used in reference to our church. Most people know this already, and anyone that wants to is free to insult me about it. So have at it.
I'm sure that we're all going to keep this civil and appropriate. Okay, you stated your opinion. Is there anyone who would like to offer a comment for Randy?
I would. I have always been bothered by the stigma attached to that term, and also as I think it just has too many bad connotations. It should not be that word.
Okay, other discussion? And the other discussion on our endorsement of statement of conscience?
Don,
yeah.
Do you know whether, because clearly we're just voting to allow this to be on the agenda of UA, so of GA next year. So
this is an endorsement.
Right, so it's just an endorsement of this going onto the agenda at GA next year. So I don't know, do we actually have, are we able to say, it's just a yes or no? All right, we either endorse it or we don't endorse it. Are we able, because I also am not comfortable with the term white supremacy because I feel like it shuts down conversations more than it promotes them.
Well, this requires 75% of our congregation to endorse it going to General Assembly. The vote will tell. If a lot of people are uncomfortable with it, then we won't endorse it.
Yeah.
Are we confusing
I think we're confused,
statement of congregational commitment to racial justice with the piece we're endorsing for the General Assembly?
Are we?
I think we are confusing them.
We are.
Yes, I think Randy's concern is with our congregational statement that we are looking to adopt. Yes, he's giving me the thumbs up. So our congregational statement says, I can read it here. It says, we pledge to do the uncomfortable work of confronting white supremacy and racial bias in ourselves and our institution. And I certainly, in the past few years, I would say that term has changed in meaning somewhat to be more inclusive, but the historical context of talking about white supremacy and having that association with very overt hate crimes, I understand your discomfort with that. So, I'm acknowledging that. I would suggest to change confronting whiteness or something like that, that might be a better word to make us all feel more comfortable with it. But that would be something for the Race for Justice team to, or white privilege, something like that. That's all. Thank you.
All right, I'm sorry for misleading people. This is our congregational statement. Again, it requires a 75% majority. So if a lot of people are uncomfortable with it, we won't adopt it, and it can go back for revision. That's what the vote is for.
It's important.
I have a
discussion.
I was asking if I could have a moment to speak to this. Am I out of order?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
No, you may speak.
Okay, thank you. So I have been a participant on the Race for Justice team. I was not the core on writing this statement, but I was a participant on the team. I just want to say that the team worked for months on this statement. They held multiple meetings. They sought input from everybody who wanted to have it. They have twice offered for the congregation to respond to the wording. I'm trying to see if we can find a way to honor their work and walk away from here with a statement rather than simply throwing up our hands and saying, oh, let's just not approve it because of this word. I'm not saying we have to approve it the way it is. I hear what the complaint is, and I understand the multiple reactions to that word. And so I would just like to voice the preference that rather than us just step away, or rather to leave it as it is and risk us not making progress. And I really feel for the Race for Justice team. I just want to really reiterate, they worked very hard on this and multiple times put this wording out and asked for feedback. And so I would hope we would not get to this moment of the vote and then people say, oh, I object to that, let's just vote it down. Can we find a way in community, if it's one word or one phrase in an entire document, can we please find a way to change that one word or phrase so that everybody can say, okay, we don't want to, we don't want to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Can we propose an amendment now to change the word white supremacy to white privilege, whiteness, something that would be acceptable? So could we please, please think about how we could honor this work and our commitment to moving forward on this. So I just want to put that out there.
Before we offer an amendment, I would like to address it as well. You notice that it says we do the work of confronting white supremacy and racial bias in ourselves and institutions. It does not say we are white supremacists, but there are elements of white supremacy in our culture that affects our church culture that we need to have the courage to identify and change. So I would invite you, and reflecting on this language, I know it's hard to hear, but the reality of our white culture is there are elements of supremacy present, and our work is to bravely identify them within our culture and work to change them. This is not we're white supremacists. I really want to make that point.
Can I also speak to this?
Yes, the chair recognizes who is speaking?
Sonis. Yeah. This seems to me like an opportunity to practice some of the other things that we were talking about. Being willing to live with some discomfort, to recognize our leading edges and be willing to stay in them, even though we are uncomfortable with where those things are and what they're calling us to do. Personally, for me, living with that term has actually meant change in how I understand these questions. And so my vote would be to take a deep breath, approve it, live with it for a while, and see how that progresses.
Renee, would you weigh in, please?
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Okay.
Yes.
One of the things about this term is this is the term, if we as white people want to do the work of racial justice, we need to be in accountable relationship with Black, Brown, and Indigenous people. And what I've learned in my relationships, both at the UUA with especially Black people and in the community, is that white supremacy describes their experience. Just like the world is made for right-handed people, the world is also, our society is made for the white experience. And so even though we don't think of it as white supremacy, our you know, the Black and brown people that I know and am accountable to name it as white supremacy, and have done so for, you know, years. If you once I started hearing that term, I go back and I read like James Baldwin and things, and white supremacy is the term that Black and brown people use. And so I feel like the wording in this particular statement is that we're confronting white supremacy is important, and to name it white supremacy is around us, and we need to confront it. I think it's more of an aspiration because I think we can't really do it, but and the other piece of this is us white people having these conversations are reasons why we don't have many Black or brown people in our churches. So I just want to name that as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I say something?
Yes.
This is Vivian. I did not work on writing this, but I think the way it's written is really good. And I support the statement as it's written, with white supremacy in the statement. I think that if people had objections, they perhaps should have objected during the informational meeting when we first brought these statements forward. I think Renee is right. I think it's not that using the term white supremacy is blaming individuals. We inherited this. This is part of the culture, and it's not a blame lumped onto any individuals. It is working on something that's deeply rooted, systemic, and I think we need to speak it for what it is and not dance around it or say, well, you know, I'm not to blame. No, you're not to blame, but it's a responsibility we have to confront it and to recognize it and to speak it openly. And that's all I have to say on that.
Thank you.
Have we acknowledged and read Cheryl Spore's comments in chat?
I read that before I spoke.
Okay, I had to step away a minute. I missed it.
Let's take a minute for people to read what Cheryl says. She says, I still object to the premise of lumping all people together as white. There's more going on than just assuming all people are white and therefore the same. My life has not been the white life I am told it has been. Assuming it is insulting to me. I am fine with fighting supremacy of every kind, but am so tired of being told you whites are all the same.
Shut down. I just want to, I put in the chat a little while ago the current definition from Merriam-Webster on white supremacy. And Don, if you could find that, I'd like to read that, or I'd like folks to open up chat and scroll back and take a look at that. I acknowledge the opinion of other people and their feelings about the wording of white supremacy. But as society changes and evolves, so does language. We have a turnover in the meaning of things quite often, especially with really hot button words. And the Merriam-Webster now has added the definition of white supremacy, and that is the social, economic, and political systems that collectively enable white people to maintain power over people of other races. And that is undeniably happening in our country. So given that Merriam-Webster, which is an authority on words, has added that to their dictionary, we see that language has evolved and changed, and white supremacy has more than one meaning. So we need to take a look at that definition, and it's hard to come to terms with and accept that's where we are. But I echo Kathy's statement and Renee's statement, but those of you that have an opposition, I acknowledge that, and I ask you to look within your hearts and to look at the definition. This is really important to our brothers and sisters and non-binary folks of color.
I don't know. I don't understand why I can't.
I have a question for the parliamentarian before we go much farther. Are we able to amend this and still vote on it, or do we have to accept it as written or send it back to committee?
We could amend it as written. We could amend it and vote on it, but in deference to our team that worked on it, Dina, Rhonda, and Marianne, I think we should hear from them.
Good. Could I speak to the issue?
Who is speaking?
John Cluth. It says Martha Cluth, but it's me.
Okay, go ahead.
I wanted to speak to the issue because it always concerned me, this term white. Where does the white come from? I don't see, I'm an artist and I paint people, and I never paint people white. And I was concerned about where
You've frozen up for a moment.
For a long time, concerned where this idea of white face color, white race comes from. And this actually, I think, comes from the neoclassical period in England. And they were very, very concerned with the idealism, particularly of ancient Greek sculptures. And in their idea, in the neoclassical idea, the statues were preferred in their white form rather than colored. The Greeks actually colored their statues, but the English preferred them as marble. And I think that's this idea of a white race is associated with idealism of that art culture. So when you talk about white supremacy, you're talking about the ideal race as associated with the sculptures in the museums that are made of marble. So that makes a comment about the kind of people that are ideal. And it also has to do with their ideal culture. And the one thing that's, and this is our inheritance from white supremacy, is this idea that this culture of this classical culture that the British thought was ideal in the 19th century is the desired culture. And that is one thing we have to work against because that's not appropriate, we know, anymore. So I think the idea of working against white supremacy is consistent with this notion of white sculptures as being ideal, because that's an idea whose time has passed. Does that help anybody?
I have a particular point of view I'd like to share. Would that be okay?
I'm done.
I find the last statement in the first paragraph a perfect example of white fragility. And I know that Robin DiAngelo would vote in favor of this. I would vote against.
Oh, there he is.
All right, I have another point of order question, if you will. We're talking about amending the statement. Do we have a way of voting to accept an amendment or not? If we don't, then there isn't much point in continuing the discussion here.
I can put both on the voting ballot. I can do my best to clearly word that one is to vote on the statement and the statement wording, but is there a motion for the specific amendment, or, we can also just vote on it as is, and if it fails, we go back and we go back.
Yes, currently we are voting to accept this amendment, and then we diverged back into discussion. So
we can call the question and just move this to vote. I think that I think two things. I think there's a lot of, there were the discussion meetings, right, in terms of what would we change it to, that I think it's very difficult to do in this forum and in the time that we have. So, you know, but I think we've got a call. We have on the floor a call to end basically the question. Call the question, which means
yes, end discussion and proceed, which I think is probably the thing to do. If we're not happy with it, then it gets revised. That's what the voting is for. So
well, it gets voted on. It needs the what?
Excuse me, somebody has called the question. All discussion stops.
Okay.
Right. Could I say, this is Mary Ann, could I say one thing before we get to call the question? Because I'm in favor of us not spending our time trying to modify it here. I'd like to see if we can pass it as is. The one thing I would like to make a comment about is that the term white supremacy actually came from comments made by congregants actually at both of our meetings. And so these were not terms that the Race for Justice team or the subcommittee who did the writing actually put into the statement. These are words that came from members of the congregation. So I think the idea that let's first try to see where we stand in terms of the statement as it is written now. And then if that doesn't get us to 75% approval, then I think we have another discussion.
All right. The question has been called, and there is a second by Vivian, and a second. Well, Mary, I think, has the first second. So let's move on and see what happens. Wasn't expecting so much controversy for my first meeting, but it's been fun. I kind of like these things. This is what makes it a good time.
So this is going to be voted on, right?
Yes, we're going to either accept it or not. So
yes, the motion was made and seconded. It's on the ballot. Vote on.
And when it comes to the UUA statement, which also uses that language, but we're not voting on that. Does that need 75% or just a simple majority?
That is a 75% as well.
Okay.
All right, before we continue, let's just take a deep breath together. I'm grateful to each of you for joining in discussion over something that is difficult. The journey for racial justice is a hard one, and I appreciate our covenantal behavior in making space for one another. Thank you for that. Some of the most important work we do together is that covenantal space to hear one another out, especially when we disagree, but that's where we most learn. So now it is my privilege to offer us something hopefully less controversial and very joyful for me personally. The title of affiliated community minister is a recognition that an educated, credentialed, and ordained minister within our congregation is not only serving our church, but is serving and growing Unitarian Universalism by sharing our values and our commitment to building a better world through serving the greater community. As a colleague and a firsthand witness to Christy Anderson's gifts and skills for ministry, it is an honor to recommend her as an affiliated community minister. This recommendation is not only in recognition and gratitude for her ministry to this congregation and to the greater Kent community for many years, but also trusts that she will continue to share her gifts, her leadership skills, her compassion, and her commitment to justice with us and with the greater community. Along with her service to this congregation as a commissioned lay minister, worship associate, musician, and a gifted preacher and racial justice leader, Christie's community ministry includes working with the staff and patrons of Kent Social Services and actively participating with local justice groups, including the NAACP, League of Women Voters, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and Education Committees, and the Kent Interfaith Alliance for Racial Reconciliation and Justice. By virtue of her education, ordination, service to this congregation, and service to the Kent community, and the gifts she brings to ministry, it is my joy to make the motion that we designate Christy Anderson as an affiliated community minister of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Kent. Is there a second?
Second.
I third and fourth.
Christy is a Wonder Woman. We wholeheartedly approve. Amen to that. And now I believe it is time to do our voting. Am I correct?
Do we have appreciation of outgoing leaders from Vivian?
Can we start I think next is voting and then appreciation.
Are we going to do it that way? I thought voting was last.
And my appreciation is just for outgoing board members. I'm not sure who's doing appreciation for outgoing leaders, because I'm not sure who they are. So I didn't prepare that.
Okay, well, if you have outgoing board members, then cover them.
So I'm sorry, what are you doing next?
Okay, I guess this is me because I see a slide here, right? Or are we supposed to vote first? What is the procedure? We just do the leaders first, the board members? I will go ahead. Okay, so we are pleased to honor the service of 3 outgoing board members who have served our congregation faithfully and well. Board members make critical decisions behind the scenes to keep our church serving us all. So I'm going to start with 2. We honor outgoing board members Dave Smeltzer and Blaine Vesely with the gift of libations and fellowship at Kent's newest brew pub, the Northwater Brewing Company. Unfortunately, Dave is not here because he had to do work at a graduation that suddenly got shifted in time. So he isn't here to hear this tribute to him. But if you have enjoyed numerous videos about the church, you can thank Dave. Besides providing technical and creative wizardry to our board and to the congregation, Dave has taken the minutes at every board meeting, which is a thankless yet necessary job. He has been a voice of reason and humor, and he has kept us on course and kept us positive through this time of transition. If you're excited about starting to use our new Hobbs Hall, you can thank in part Blaine Vesely. He has worked tirelessly to plan and to keep us updated on construction projects progress. He's also brought humor and a positive outlook to the board. We will miss his puns, sometimes bad puns, as well as his insights that have made a difference in our process of envisioning and planning the future of our church. So these gift cards will be heading your way, Dave and Blaine, and I hope you have a good time at the Northwater Brewing Company. And we extend our thanks to both Blaine and Dave. And then finally, we can switch the slide now. We give our heartfelt thanks to our outgoing board moderator, Diana Watt, who unfortunately is not here because of a family issue. Diana has led us with dedication and skill through this pandemic time into what will be a new era for our church. She has run the board meetings with a steady and calming hand. She has led us through the process of envisioning our congregation's future and of discerning our congregation's priorities. Diana has made service on the board a pleasure and a blessing. We are grateful for her leadership. And so to Diana, we give this lovely chalice as our thank you for all she has done. She can expect it to arrive soon at her house. And I do not know who was going to talk about the outgoing other leaders, but does anybody want to name them? Since I'm not sure who they are.
Well, I don't have the list. Maybe Reverend Stephen can help us.
Let's see, first comes to mind, Chris Dumm and Bonnie Harper, having served on the Committee on Shared Ministry. We have Elaine having served on the Endowment Committee.
Perhaps if someone is outgoing, they can say that and we can thank them.
Amber Weeby from the FinSecs. Who's going off leadership development?
David Brown.
David Brown, thank you.
I think we should thank Katie for all her songwriting and performance this year.
And thanks to all the leaders who are going off and who are staying on and who are entering.
You remember what I said during the service about the seam work. It is all of us together. So I second the thanks to all of you, those of you who continue to serve, those of you who have served so faithfully and hopefully will find a calling to serve again. Thank you. The AV team, those who serve week after week behind the scenes for our virtual services and other events, thank you. And there are a lot of thank yous to offer.
And a big thanks to Mary Beth.
Right.
Yes. I wanted to give a special shout out to Mary Beth, who is most of the time behind the scenes, coordinating, communicating, doing much of the work, often unknown and unrecognized, that allows our lay leaders and staff to focus on vision and mission. This place runs so beautifully, in large part because of Mary Beth's dedication and commitment to our church. So Mary Beth, this is a special shout out to you. Thank you. I guess
I will.
Great.
I did for the other staff, for all the staff, unless you were already talking about staff and I missed it because I was busy fixing the voting. But I'm going to start over then. So for all the staff, amazing work, and yet again, and I think I said this in a smaller group, so I'm happy to say it in a larger group. Having worked very closely with Mary Beth and Reverend Stephen this year on the MET, and of course in concert with them as with the rest of the staff on the operations for the church this year, a stellar job in a virtual space. The staff have all gone above and beyond. I mean, stuffy sleepovers in the